جاء أحد منكم من الغائط أو جاء أحد منكم من الغائط أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا سعيدا طيبا فامسحوا بوجوهكم وأيديكم منه ما يريد الله ليجعل عليكم من حرج ولكن يريد ليطهركم وليتم نعمته عليكم لعلكم تشكرون واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم وميثاقه الذي واثقكم به إذ قلتم سمعنا وأطعنا واتقوا الله إن الله عليم بذات الصدور يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم مغفرة وأجر عظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم إن شاء الله.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Please open your Qur'ans to the following two sets of ayat. The first one that we will need is from chapter number 9, Surah At-Tawbah, verse 126. And then chapter number 14, 1-4, verse number 24 and 25. If you kindly have these two verses open and available, then we will be able to read these verses and study these verses together, inshaAllah. For the love of Her Eminence, Lady Fatima Masuma alayha salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana li hadha. وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أولا يرون أنهم يفتنون في كل عام مرة أو مرتين ثم لا يتوبون ولا هم يذكرون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How was your Muharram and Safar? Successful, inshaAllah? When I ask this question, from one level, I mean it very affably, very personably. How was your Muharram and Safar? From another way, I'm actually asking us at the strategic level, how was our Muharram? How was the month of Safar for us? In terms of the broader Muslim community, or in terms of the broader Shia community in the United Kingdom, after 2 full months of majalis, day after day, back to back, looking at the community as a whole, or looking at our own community here in the city or in the area, what have you taken away from the months of Muharram and Safar? From one perspective, we are supposed to improve individually. There is the whole notion of Islah, isn't there? Reform is the ultimate goal of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein salawatullahu salamuhu alayh. You've heard it over and over again. Inni lam akhruj ashiran wala batiran wala mufsidan wala zalima wa innama kharajtu li talabil islah fi ummati jaddi sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. I am not rising because I am an oppressor or a mischief maker, or doing this for folly or for fun or for fame or for fortune, but I'm rising in order to create reform in the ummah of my grandfather. From one perspective, there is the individual reform. From another perspective, there is the reform of the ummah at large, and everything in between, every layer in between. Before reform can occur, before progress can occur, we need to know what the challenges are of our community. So I ask again, after 2 months of the most intense period of when the community gets together, what have you learned about what the needs of the community are? Where the strengths are, where the opportunities are, where the weaknesses are, where the challenges are, what are those internally and what are those externally as well? It cannot be that after 2 months, we've only been coming for the majlis itself. but we've not had an opportunity to take a step back and reflect on those matters that actually prove to us the strength of the community, or indeed some of the challenges of the community. There is no better time to discern that than actually when we get together for 2 consecutive months. Tonight, inshallah, I want to be able to show you the pinnacle of what Qum is, what Lady Fatima Masuma alayhi salam is, and to show you that that whole trajectory of movement started very, very humbly, very small. If you notice the history of Qum, it is not incidental. This is planned by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. In our traditions, Qum has a role to play in terms of leading global justice. And without Qum, it cannot be achieved. But where does it start? It actually starts with one individual converting to Islam. One individual coming to Islam changes the trajectory of humanity in its entirety. We're going to come to this in a few minutes in time, inshallah. But beyond actually just mentioning the history of Qum al-Muqaddasa, is for us to reflect that when a community becomes strong and progresses, it has to start somewhere. The foundations have to be strong. And then the fruit comes from it very, very quickly, inshallah. In order for us to think about how the strength of our community comes, there has to be a period of reflection. It's been a very intense 2 months of majalis, 2 months and 8 days until the Eid al-Zahra alayhi salam. We have to really, as a community, understand what has been accomplished in these 2 months, beyond coming and just coming for the majlis itself. There has to be that growth, there has to be that strength, that opportunity to see where our community is at based on these events of the last 2 months. Okay. Please open your Qur'ans to chapter number 9, Surah At-Tawbah, verse 120, which was 126. Ahsantum. Barakallahu feekum. Now, the initial context of this ayah is that Allah is addressing the munafiqeen in the city of Medina al-Munawwarah. But this is actually a principle that God gives us in the Quran. The ayah says the following: A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. أَوَلَا يَرَوْنَ أَنَّهُمْ يُفْتَنُونَ فِي كُلِّ عَامٍ مَرَّةً أَوْ مَرَّتَيْنِ. Do they not see that they are tested once or twice every year? ثُمَّ لَا يَتُوبُونَ وَلَا هُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ. Yet they do not turn to Allah, nor do they bring to mind something that they need. Now look what God is saying. It is within His right, within His actions, to test a people once or twice every year. When God tests a people, of course, it is not accidental, it is not purposeless. For God to put something in the way of a community is the same as when God puts something in the way of me and you individually. Allah tests me to see my sincerity, to see how I react, to see my patience, my sabr and my hilm, to see whether I've learnt past lessons, all of these and many, many more that you already know about. When you are tested in life for any reason, it's purposeful. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ شَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ. There's a reason for it. Allah says, I'm going to test you with hunger or with fear or with loss of family or loss of wealth, but give glad tidings to those people who are patient. They don't see the immediacy of what they're going through, they see the end of what they're going through. They see the reward with Allah by virtue of what they're going through. So Allah tests us individually, purposefully. God says in this ayah, do they not realize? Do they not take time to see, observe, reflect that I, Allah, test them communally once or twice? Not once or twice in their lifespan, once or twice a year. Once or twice isn't limited to once or twice. Allah may test a community 3 or 4 or 5 times in a year. This is right. But again, think about this. When tests hit our community, are we aware that they are tests? Do we realize why God is giving us these tests? Do we see that in these moments they are opportunities to sit back, to reflect on what is happening to our community? These are not random, purposeless incidents. Let's just give an example to whet the appetite for the discussion. Only a couple of weeks back, our friends from the far right, riots across the country. Mosques targeted, refugee centers targeted, businesses targeted. Many, many Muslims were afraid to even leave their houses for a number of days. Think about this as a question. Allah says in this ayah, Allah tests the community once or twice every year. Is it purposeless, or is it to show us where we are as a community? To show us what the reality of what's going on around us is there. Are we supposed to be oblivious to it? Are we supposed to carry on majlis after majlis after majlis, not aware of what is actually happening in front of our eyes? No. There's a purpose behind showing us these things. Think about this very carefully as a question. And I mean this honestly. What did it show us about our own communities? It showed us about other communities. SubhanAllah, some communities stood with us hand in hand. Right? But what did it show us about our own community? Think about this very carefully. How many communities even called the other to see, are you all right? Do you need anything? And you see, when these events occur, it is actually showing a mirror to ourselves. This is where we are as a community. There are some communities that were hit harder than others, correct? If you live, for example, in Liverpool, hit very differently to if you were in South London. Let's be honest, the far right are not going to come to South London and start a riot. You really want to go up against the Muslims in South London, the black community in the South London, you'll be thrown out on your ear, so to speak. But there are other communities where they felt, in Newcastle and in Hartlepool and in other places, that they felt emboldened. But imagine if you and I were in those communities and we didn't get a phone call to check how you are. See, this is actually showing us Allah is testing the community once or twice, fi kulli am, every year. But what happens? Allah says, many of them, they don't turn back to Allah. وَلَهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ. They don't think further. There's no reflection on the way the state of the community is. Muharram comes. Safar comes. 2 months and 8 days of continuous majalis. The Ashra, then we have the 10th after, the 20th after, we have the 30th after, we have the istishhadat of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, istishhadat of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, all the way, Prophet's wafat, 8th Imam's wafat, all the way to today and to Eid al-Zahra. It cannot be that our community is only thinking about putting on the majlis and not collectively engaging on where we are. Now, in the books of Ahadith, the story of Qom is an outstanding, tremendous story. Very briefly, 2 or 3 narrations about the rank of this grand city and this rank of this lady, salamullahi alayha. One narration which comes to us from Ahlul Bayt, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een. Imam alayhi salam is narrated to have said, Inna lillahi haraman wa huwa Makkah. Allah has a haram, a sanctuary, and that is Mecca. وَإِنَّ لِلرَّسُولِ حَرَمًا وَهُوَ Medina. And the Prophet has a sanctuary, and that is Medina. وَإِنَّ لِأَمِيرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ حَرَمًا وَهُوَ Kufa. And وَلَنَا أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّلَامِ. And for us there is a haram, and that is going to be in Qom. Imagine, from the second Imam to the 12th, Salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, their sanctuary, their place of resort is in Qom al-Muqaddasa. That's the rank of this grand lady and what has been output. In one narration, it is a weak narration, and I won't emphasize it on something that you can take as ilmi, but nevertheless it's mentioned in our books of ahadith that knowledge will depart Kufa and go to Qom, and from there around the world will the spread of knowledge occur. It is a weak narration sanadan and many other problems with it, but nevertheless it is mentioned there that Qom will be the place in which knowledge of the world is going to be spread around. Or another hadith comes to us from our sixth Imam Jaffer as-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, where Imam alayhi salam says about defeating or liberating Al-Quds. I mentioned this hadith many times to you in the past, where Imam alayhi salam says about the ayah of the Quran, Uli ba'sin shadid, that they're going to be people of power, that it's going to liberate Al-Quds from Banu Israel. And when he is asked, who are these people? Uli ba'sin shadid, the Quran says, people of power and prowess. Imam alayhi salam says 3 times, Wallahi, 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 ha'ula min Qum. They are from the people of Qum, min ahli Qum. Imagine, Qum is going to be the place as to where the enemy is going to be defeated from. Imagine what Qum is. In one narration, it's going to be the place where knowledge around the world is going to be spread from. From another hadith, it's going to be the place where Quds is going to be liberated from. Imagine the rank of this city in our texts. Where did it start? One person converted to Islam. At the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, a tribe from Yemen by the name of Banu al-Ash'ar, they heard about Islam and traveled to meet the Prophet. One person from that tribe from Yemen, Banu al-Ash'ar, by the name of Malik bin Amir, he converted to Islam on that meeting with the Prophet. He then returned back to his tribe in Yemen. They then converted to Islam. Later on, they then migrated to the city of Kufa. After the downfall of Kufa to Banu Umayyah, la'natullahi alayhim ajma'een, this tribe split into 3. One group continued to follow Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. One of them followed their ancestor Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and then the other followed Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They stayed in the city of Kufa. Then during the time of the reign of Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, and a little bit after, when they saw opportunity, they migrated to the city of Qom. This family, the Al-Ash'ari family, migrated to the city of Qom and made it a Shia stronghold from that time. From there, people were attracted to sit and live in the city of Qom. It became a place where the muhaddithin, where the ulama gathered. It's very interesting, in that area, locationally, geographically, Naishapur was the largest city of Sunni ulama at the time of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam. And Qom, which is only nowadays an hour's drive away from Naishapur, was the stronghold for the Shia community. Open your Qur'ans, turn to chapter number 14, Surah Ibrahim, verse number 24. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when we establish something correct, when the foundations of our community is laid strong, then the fruits will come from it in all times, no matter the difficulties that come from it. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alam tara kayfa ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء. Have you not considered, have you not reflected how Allah sets forth a parable of a good word being like a firm tree? Its root is firm and thus its branches reach high into the sky. What happens? Verse number 25. تؤتي أكلها كل حين بإذن ربها, yielding its fruit in every season by the permission of its Lord. When a community has the foundations correct, when its structure is there, systems are there, it can flourish. Qom was started by a handful of people, and look at what it's reached, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. It yields its fruits in every season, that until today and until the end of time, all of us are going to be beneficiaries of that movement of Lady Fatima Masuma alayha salam. Think about this now as a conclusion. When I say the 2 months and 8 days has to be reflected on, we need to take a step back and think about those challenges that we saw, or what opportunities have come, or what we've collectively done together and moved forward. From a communal level, we can ask very simple questions. We can say things like, from last year to this year, are we seeing an increase in the attendance in our community, or a decisive decrease in attendance in our community? You see, the number of Muslims and Shia in the UK is increasing. Migration is occurring. Our families are actually growing in number, whereas other communities are lessening. Our numbers are increasing. But I challenge you to think about this very carefully. If you take the stats from last year to this year, will you see more people have come or less people have come? If the numbers of our community nationally are on the increase, but the number of people attending are on the decrease, this has to be noted by the community. It has to be noted by the leadership. We need to be very aware of the way in which we're presenting the program. If in and of itself it's unattractive, then people are not coming. And there are ways that we can measure that. Think about the Arba'een March in Marble Arch, only a few days ago. The number of people coming to the center, the number of people over that period of time, you can easily measure whether we're a community in growth or in regress. Or we can ask ourselves, in the 2 months and 8 days, have we managed to recruit any new volunteers to the community? If after 2 months of lecture after lecture after lecture, we haven't managed to inspire or grab one more youth to be able to serve, and the volunteer pool is exactly the same as it was 2 months ago, and we're asking, how are we going to continue and how are we going to grow? On a national strategic level, we mentioned earlier on, how have we responded to those riots? What are the policies that are in place to protect us or to communicate thoroughly between ourselves? Or, for example, the consequences for the Muslim community after the election. Where is the Muslim community now, 2 months later on? After all that build-up and all that hype, where are we? What is the outcome for me and you? Can you see? 2 months and 8 days of majalis have gone past. But if we don't know how to measure our community strengths and weaknesses, if we don't have a way to know whether the community is in a stronger position after all that finance, all that time, all that effort has been put into place, then we don't know whether we're actually in a stronger position or in a weaker position. We're just guessing. And when the wind blows us this way or that, we will go this way or we'll go that. The Quran says that when the roots are strong, we will grow ila sama, to the heavens itself. When the community, even like in Qom, was a strong foundation, look at where it ends up leading. It liberates the whole of humanity at large, the ahadith predict. We want all of our communities to be like that. In the books of narrations, the ulama mentioned that the closest person to Lady Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam is Lady Fatima Masuma alayha salam. For a woman to be the spiritual home of this entire movement of Shiism and Islam is enough to tell you the rank of this lady. She was attacked and eventually martyred from that attack. Herself, she asked to be moved away from her direction towards Khurasan, towards the city of Qum, where eventually Fatima Ma'asuma alayhi salam succumbed to the injuries that she had had. One of the ulama says, I did an a'mal for 40 days and 40 nights to be able to find out where the actual grave of Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam is. After completing my a'mal, my grandmother Fatima al-Zahra came to me in a dream, and she said to me, my grave is going to remain a secret. But if you want to do my ziyarah, if you want to benefit from my ziyarah, perform the ziyarah of Fatima Ma'asuma al-Qum. Can you imagine, in these days, immediately after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is in these days right now that the attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra is taking place. The Prophet had only left but a couple of days and they decided to try to attack the house of Fatima al-Zahra. They surrounded it with 300 men, unsheathed their swords, baying for the blood of Ali ibn Abi Talib. They said, we will force him to come out and give allegiance. When they surrounded that house, they were told, Fatima is inside that house. The second caliph would respond, what in? Who cares if Fatima is inside the house? And then breaks down the door, which falls upon Fatima al-Zahra. It kills her unborn child. Muhsin becomes shaheed from this world. Can you imagine the way in which the various Fatimas of Ahlul Bayt alayhimussalam have been treated? Or imagine the Fatima, the daughter of Imam al-Hussein, who narrates that I was standing outside the tents of Karbala on the evening of Sham Ghariba when the horse began to ride towards me. I ran to the left and I ran to the right in order to be able to escape the horseman. The horseman chased me down and with the flat side of his spear hit me upon my back so hard that I fell to the ground. I fell unconscious. When I woke up in the lap of my auntie Kulthum. I looked at her and I said, Auntie, my hijab has been snatched from me. I am without my covering. Is there any cloth that you can give to me? My auntie Kulthum responded and said, even we have had our cloths taken from us. Even I do not have a cloth left to be able to give you. This is how the Fatimas of Ahlul Bayt alayhimussalam have been treated. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimeen. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Please raise your hands and join me in dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, to allow us to be alongside him at all times in our life and in our death. We ask you, Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah and the ma'rifah of Sayyidah Fatima Ma'asuma alayhi salam. We ask you, Ya Allah, there are many people in our community who are unwell, particularly Bashir uncle's brother-in-law, Abdul Hussein. He had a fall and I think he has hurt his hip, correct? So for him and for all those who are mareed in our communities, please raise your hands. Let us recite dua for all of them. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Please conclude this discussion in honor of Lady Fatima Masuma with 3 very loud salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
Brothers and sisters, Salaam Alaikum. Thank you, Sheikh. We missed those lectures of yours, opening the Quran, we've missed that for over the past couple of months. As you're all aware, we're having the Council of European Jamaat's election this coming Thursday, inshallah. And you also know that we had a candidate, Brother Arif Ali, who visited us last Friday and presented his vision for CoEJ and for our community. Today we've got the incumbent president. We've also got the vice president with him as well. And he's also a candidate for the upcoming elections. And he will be presenting his vision tonight to us. And then thereafter we'll have a Q&A session, and the Q&A session will be moderated by Maulana Sheikh Jaffer Ladak, and you'll be able to pose any questions that you have to Brother Salim. There is a Menti link, so you can actually send your questions, and then Sheikh will then present them to Brother Salim. Can I ask the gents on this side to come over to the Imam Barga, and may I request the ladies, if they feel they can come into the gents namaz area, and it'll be easier when we have the Q&A session. So can I ask some of the volunteers to just put a table here? Zain, yeah. Put table and chair there, so we can use that for Q&A. In the meantime, can you please welcome Brother Salim with a Nari Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Are we waiting for the ladies to come?
While we're waiting for the ladies to come in, can I request you all to recite Surah Fatiha for all the Maroomins of Kumail Naqvi's family? He's the one who sponsored today's Majalis, Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Respected Sheikh Jaffer Ladak, Pramukh Sahab, Vice President Murtaza Bhai, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to thank Leeds Jamaat for giving me this opportunity to come and talk to the members. So this is a great opportunity for me to share my manifesto with all of you, especially the achievements for the last 3 years, and if elected, for the vision for the next 3 years, inshallah. The first slide that you can see on the screen that I have shared is a very important one, because for me, this is something that we should all aspire to run our lives, and especially run the community with these values. And as you can see, these are the characteristics of our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him. And some of those key words there, loyalty, truthfulness, reliability, and so on and so forth, are very, very important aspects of how this community should be running. But one of the most important one there that always stood out for me since my childhood was the fact that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was very approachable. And when I say approachable, he was non-judgmental. There are many times where he was known to be approached with questions that today we would be very worried to approach anybody within the community, either brothers or sisters or even our elders, because we would be judged. And he taught us through his life, through his examples, that we should empower people in the community. We should help people when they are struggling. When somebody comes with their problems to us, rather than us judge them, let's support them. Let's help them. And this was one of my biggest motivation in serving this community. When I started in 2021, the community and the world was going through a lot of struggles. A lot of activities had stopped. Within CoEJ, there was hardly any activities happening. The volunteers had gone away. People were scared to come to the mosque. The seniors were very insecure in terms of coming out would help them with their health or not. And there were too many uncertainties in the world and in the community. And this was a mammoth task for myself and my team to take this work, to take this great challenge. I'm going to share a few slides here today, and before I start talking about the journey that started in 2021, I'm going to share a little bit about myself within 1 minute. So my name is Salim, Rehmatullah, for those of you who don't know me. I was born in a very small country in Africa called Burundi. I speak a few languages, so you can, after the program, come and speak to me in any language you want. I speak French, English, Gujarati, Kutchi, Urdu, Swahili, fluently, alhamdulillah. So you can come and speak to me in any of those languages. I am in the real estate business, so I understand real estate quite well, alhamdulillah. And my community credentials, I have been a president of a Jamaat in Peterborough for 2 terms. I have served as a councillor for World Federation for 1 term, CoEJ councillor for a term. I have been a madrasa teacher. I have been part of sports liaison for CoEJ, specifically for tennis. And I was also part of the English lecture committee. So I have had a lot of engagement with the public, working within a Jamaat. As you would know, this is where everything happens. At CoEJ level, we help everybody strategically, but this is where it matters because the people are here. So the strategy and everything that we bring into CoEJ or any of those umbrella bodies ultimately is to add value to your lives. I'm not sure if this slide, okay, there you go. So I've gone through who am I. I'll share a little bit about what have I achieved, or I would rather say what have we achieved as a team in the last 3 years. What are we looking to achieve in the next 3 years, and why should you vote for me on Thursday the 12th, inshallah. Before I share the last 3 years, let me share a small story with you. Because many people ask me what motivates me to do this. Why am I here? Why have I decided to do this work? So there's a couple of things I'd like to share. Has anybody seen a lighthouse? Does everybody know what a lighthouse is? A lighthouse, even though we see it sometimes as a structure that is just there, serving only one purpose, but the lighthouse teaches us quite a lot in our community, as human beings, and even from the prophetic values that we look at. So the lighthouse, even though it's just a building that does not move anywhere, wherever there's storm, there's rain, it still stays there. However, one of the main purpose of that lighthouse is to shine as bright as it can to help those that need that help to get back to shore. But that is not the most impressive thing about that lighthouse. The thing that impresses me most about that lighthouse is when it shines, it does not differentiate who it shines for. Whoever needs that light will come to shore. And this is something that we see in the prophetic values from our role models. That they were shining regardless of who needed that light. And even though we seem to think that that light was shining for us and keeps shining for us, but their light shines for everybody. And this is something I feel we need to replicate for our community, but for humanity at large. The second motivator for me was my interaction with people like yourselves. So many, many years ago, before I started, or in fact at the beginning of my journey as a president, my interaction with one of the young person in a wuzu area that I hadn't seen for a long time, I asked him and I said, how come I haven't seen you at the mosque? And his answer was something that shook me. He told me, uncle, do you know my problems? Do you know if I have a job? Do you know if I'm struggling financially? Do you know if anybody in my family has any health issues? And it was a very embarrassing moment for me because I thought I could stand here as a leader and speak about things that sound very nice, or in fact not even communicate with you in the language that you understand. But what good is that if I don't understand your problems? And I promised myself one thing, that if I take the journey to leadership, be a president of the Jamaat or president of the Council of European Jamaats, if I haven't understood your real problems, I have failed. I have not done justice to this position. So before we started, or in fact when we started the 3 years, I needed to understand what challenges people are facing in the community. So we invited all the presidents of every Jamaat over 2 days in a retreat. Rasul Bhai was there as well. There were many other leaders who were there. In fact, every president was present there. And throughout that weekend, we identified challenges that every Jamaat goes through with the people. How would they want to see CoEJ adding value to them? And there were a lot of important information that came to us. But I didn't want to stop there, because that was the journey that was given to me by the presidents. I also wanted to understand your journey, the journey from every Jamaat members. So we launched the census. And Alhamdulillah, I think it was one of the most successful censuses that was run at CoEJ. We received over 4,000 entry. And even though I was proud of that census and the data that came, I was very sad at the result that came out of that census. There were realities there that we had to face, that the community was struggling financially, spiritually, mental health, development, general health, and the list goes on. So I felt something needed to be done. We could not just look at the activities of CoEJ that had stopped, because that was important, but at the same time we had to also fix a problem that was a real problem. And as most of you would have heard, this conversation between a heart surgeon and a mechanic, where the mechanic is asking the heart surgeon, how come you get paid a lot more than me? And the heart surgeon says, try fixing that car while it's running. And that's exactly what we had to do, I feel. That we had to bring all the activities of CoEJ back while we have to fix a real problem, without ignoring it. People were struggling financially. There was data in front of me telling me that people had to choose between eating and heating. There were some people who were saying they didn't have enough money to feed their kids and send food with them to school. And the list was huge. So at that time I thought we have to do something as an emergency. So we called an emergency meeting with all the leaders, and I proposed to do a hardship fund. And at the time I remember there was resistance because there was no money. And to open a hardship fund, that means we have to have unlimited fund. We could have 200, 300, 400 people applying. Where would the money come from? I said, look, regardless of where the money is coming from, let's start this. We will find a solution. This is great work. If we take one step in the name of one of our imams, and it happened to be that it was a great time at the time, so we called it the Imam Raza Hardship Fund. And we received so much barakah from that, that fund became one of the most successful work that I think we've done in terms of relief at CoEJ. That every Jamaat that I visit, it makes me very happy when people come and say that thank you very much for launching this fund. And this is thanks to you all. I just felt a pain to bring this fund to the people, but this was the help of all of you. This was the help of many volunteers, the people who have been contributing to this fund that made this possible. And this fund keeps growing. The challenges are not over. We need to make this fund even bigger, because the challenges don't end here. People need help with mental health. There's a fund that's needed for that, which we're going to launch, inshallah, if we're elected. There were matrimonial issues. We looked into that as well. People are struggling to find the right spouse right now. We didn't have a plan before we arrived. So we looked at getting all the matchmakers together and identifying how can we help people find the right spouse. But the challenge was even bigger than that. Those people who are married at the moment are struggling to stay married because they haven't got any trainings. So we held a couples enrichment program. I attended there with my wife as well to understand how it works. And there were many couples there who also benefited. Alhamdulillah, it was very successful, and we think we need to have more of those because that will avoid the bigger problem, which is at the moment is a reality, which is the divorce. So we're also looking into that the divorce in the unfortunate circumstances should be dignified. I have so much to share. You can see from my slides, these are all the activities that we've achieved in the last 3 years. And this is why it makes me very sad when people often say, what has CoEJ achieved? What does CoEJ do? Because what CoEJ does is not just me. I drive this, I have a vision. I feel my strength is leadership and making sure things happen. But the real heroes are hundreds of volunteers from different jamaats who deliver all this. So if anything, whenever we next ask ourselves, has CoEJ done anything, we should think about those volunteers, and we will make sure that we keep passing this information through your counselors so you see the work that's been happening, inshallah. You all have the manifesto. You have received the manifesto in detail, and we want to do justice to the question and answer session as well. So I'm not going to go into too much details of what we've achieved. And in terms of what the objectives are, I think Sheikh is going to be facilitating, and we're going to discuss about some of the aspects of it. Please make sure you can download, if you haven't received the manifesto, and you can go through it in detail. We've listed everything. We have a strong team behind. And inshallah, if elected, there's a lot of work that needs to be finished. The last sentence that I would say, why vote for me? Coming from a real estate background, you know the most important part of real estate is the foundation. And for those of you who understand, if the foundation is strong, the building will last for almost forever. And what I feel is the last 3 years, even though we've delivered so much work, a lot of it that you don't see is the foundation of this organization. And especially for our work. But it's time for us to finish this building. And this is what I'm asking the community, that we have laid the foundations with the volunteers. Let us finish this building so this building can last for the next 100 years for the community, that for those who come after us in the next 3 years, have a solid building to keep serving the community. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We moving there? Should I take this?
Salam. Thank you, Salim, for that presentation. Sheikh, can you join us on the table? And Salim. So what we'll have, please take a seat. We had some, we had a Menti link, and we asked members to ask questions. So, Sheikh, I think you've got some of those questions. I'll be monitoring the link. So, for any further questions, and I'll send through if they haven't come through to you. Yeah. So, with that, I hand over to you, Sheikh. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلي يا ربي على محمد وآله الطاهرين. I don't know if you know, we had our hustings for the upcoming, the recent election. I think this brings far more drama, actually. So I hope you don't mind. We're going to ask some pointed questions based on your manifesto.
Sure.
And some others have started to come through as well. So I'm going to read the first one out. It says the following. You have been president of CoEJ for a few years now. Respectfully, why is this the first time we are seeing you? And is it a coincidence that you happen to be here only when you need our votes?
Thank you, Sheikh. So, my apologies, first of all, for correcting you, Sheikh, as I wouldn't dare to correct you, but this is not the first time I'm here.
I'm reading it out.
I know.
I didn't say it was
No, but it's coming from you, Sheikh, so I wouldn't, because I would find it very disrespectful that I wouldn't want to correct you. But generally, I would like to correct that this is not the first time. We made sure, there was never any meetings held here, I think, at the level that we did. So we made sure we bring an AGM here, which, as you know, is one of the biggest, is the conference, really. It's the ultimate meeting that we have. We held it here in Leeds, and alhamdulillah, it was so successful that everybody until today keeps saying that it was one of the best meetings. So we have been here. It is very difficult for me to attend on a regular basis because, as you know, we cover many jamaats. Yes, I feel sometimes very embarrassed that we have to attend when there's elections, and which shouldn't be the case. We should be attending a lot more. I hope that answers the question.
Is there any follow-up to that from anyone? Or shall I move to the next question? Okay. So, so there are going to be a few questions about the manifesto and looking at some of the accomplishments and the achievements that have been mentioned. Much of the manifesto focuses on past achievements, many of which are initiatives which were started before your tenure, which gives the impression that a lot of what has been done is off the back of the previous CoEJ management team, and that future initiatives might simply be an extension of these existing projects without much innovation. How do you plan to adapt your initiatives for the future, ensuring that they meet the evolving community needs and address new challenges in the coming years?
Thank you. So I do agree that a lot of the achievements were activities that were from the past. But you must appreciate that when these activities had stopped, it was not easy to bring these activities back because it was almost like starting everything from zero. There's a lot of manpower that goes into planning and organizing these activities, especially when it comes to looking for volunteers. There's hundreds of hours that go into planning every activity. And with a lack of volunteers, at times we had to be part of the planning of those activities. Now, with very little experience in some of those activities, we felt that it was a very, very difficult couple of years for many people. And in fact, it continues to be so. However, bringing new activities and new initiatives, this is something that is constantly evolving because we consult people. From the beginning of the term, I made sure that we bring the chairmen, but we didn't stop there. We also had different retreats from different age groups, from different sections of the community to understand the challenges that we have. And this is why when you look at some of the matrimonial issues, they were not already there before our term. We identified those issues by bringing specialists on board, and then we helped the people that needed it. We also brought a health specialist to look at what the health challenges are, so in order to deliver what is going to be needed in the future. The hardship fund was completely new, but this was, to grow the hardship fund, we had to again bring specialists, and we constantly working on the hardship fund to bring new process, because the process itself is quite difficult. It's not a simple process in an application and just delivering that money. We've had various meetings and we keep tweaking to make sure that the fund is much stronger, and we look into how we deliver that. Sports is something that used to happen before as MAMT, as you know, but MAMT was only done once a year. We re-looked at the whole structure with experts on board in sporting, And we started having more activities in sports throughout the year, because we felt that it's not good to have just one sporting event a year. People need to engage more within the communities, and the children have to be more active rather than just playing one event. And the list goes on. As you will see from the achievements there, a lot of the activities that were used to happen, we've tweaked them by seeking expert guidance from people in how we can add value, not just by starting those events, but by making them even better, inshallah.
Can I just on following on from that question, you may have answered it, but it's on MAMT, the change of format.
Yes.
So it was a family event. Ladies and gents used to come together, separate sports facilities, but now it's broken up so that you only have football in one day and then another sport another day. That vibrancy of the festive atmosphere was broken up. So I think that's the question that they're asking, that they felt that was detriment.
Sure. So when we did a brainstorming with the sports team at the time, one of the suggestions that came at the time from the head of sports board was, if we break these events into specific tournaments, the attendance or the focus in that specific game will be much higher than in the past, having one MAMT at the end of the year and people giving more focus on volleyball and the racket sports was forgotten, or we just attend the football and then we don't give enough attention to anything else. However, we still think that festival is very important. So we're going to bring something more exciting next year, which we thought should be done once every 3 years because it requires big planning, which is not a MAMT, it's called a super MAMT. The super MAMT means we're going to invite everybody from around the world. Traditionally, we only stick to Europe, but we looked at unity. I went there for the first time this year, in fact in December, just to see how it's run. And I was very impressed, and I think we have the potential to do something like that at CoEJ. So we've already booked the venue next year in Loughborough. This is where the team GB trains. And the facilities are phenomenal, very impressive. So we've already started working on that, and this is going to be an event that everybody's going to remember forever, because it's the first time we're going to host the whole world at that level. It's almost going to be our CoEJ Olympic Games, inshallah.
Will you be giving out gold medals? This question is about the ambiguity of outcomes on your manifesto. So the manifesto highlights several achievements, such as leadership programs, youth camps, and partnerships. However, it lacks concrete, measurable outcomes. The initiatives are described in broad strokes, but without specific results or impact assessments. What tangible, measurable outcomes have your initiatives produced? And how have they benefited the community in specific ways?
Thank you. So for every activity that we do, we have to report it to the Executive Council. And in fact, we give a full report of the success of those events. Now, traditionally, the manifesto is not there to give a report of the success of that event, is really to summarize, because otherwise I would end up having a manifesto of 60, 70 pages, and it would be more of a detailed report, which should be an indication at the executive level or at the conference. At the conference, all the boards come and report, and we have given a brief indication, and for us, the achievements, I would say, are mainly based on engagement. So for example, I'll give a simple example. So in sports, we look at how many people attend. So like Sheikh was mentioning today, we should be looking at our Thursday programs, the attendance. We should be looking at the volunteers, whether we have more volunteers than previous. For us, in terms of activities, we look at participation. Are we participating? Not only participation, we also look, is that participation adding any value to those people? Because if we're having 250 people in comparison to last year, 200, but those 250 people are ending up in a fight or bad akhlaq displayed there, this is not good result. So therefore, we have not only the attendance, but we're also looking at, is it really adding value in terms of brotherhood within the community? Are people learning something? And again, sticking to sports, recently we've been struggling into the attendance in the mosque. So most Jamaats that we've spoken to have started keeping a tab on the attendance on every program. So yesterday I was in Paris. They've done a whole chart in the attendance of every Thursday, and they do an average. And that's the data we've been asking the Jamaats. We had sent an email last year asking them if we could get the statistics of the attendance and the outcome as well from a Jamaat perspective. But the numbers are quite low at the moment. However, when we spoke to His Eminence's office, may Allah protect him, the answer that we got, if people are not coming to the center, we need to make sure we take tabligh work to the field. And that's something we've already started. We've already started measuring not only the numbers, but we're also looking at how many events now we're trying to reach the people, how many events where we're trying to do tabligh work, and how many events we have relationship between people that are being built. And in the future, what I also aim to look at is we're struggling with marriage. And I think these sort of events should be opportunities not for the boys and girls to meet, but also communities, sometimes parents to meet, fathers to meet, and also have an outcome where we could have a survey based on that event and see the success, whether it's a success in attendance, success in akhlaq, the success in tabligh, and an outcome as a holistic one, whether people are really finding the right connection or spouse through it. And that's just one aspect, because so I hope in a nutshell I'm explaining what we're trying to do there, but we have a plan in how we want to tackle every part of those events, not just in attendance only, inshallah.
So a follow-up to this is in the presentation tonight, as well as in your manifesto, one of the achievements has been the European census. You just mentioned about Paris as an example right now. But it's been over a year since the data was collected, and we have not received any data from this initiative. Moreover, there's no visible strategy that has been developed off the back of all that data. So we've gathered the data in the third term of your presidency, but in the second term of your presidency, we have a 3-year strategy that you've put together with no basis of the strategy based on the data, or allowing us to actually see the data and buy into actually what the challenges are, and to see whether the strategy is in line with the data, or it could be vastly away from the data. Why do we have a census that is not been published after a year, and why do we not have a manifesto that is directly off the back of the data?
Thank you. So when I had launched the census, there was a dilemma for me, that do we want to publish the result of the census, or do we want to take the result of the census to understand as an organization to help the people? Because we've asked some very, very sensitive questions there. And some of the answers left me in a dilemma, because I consulted people, I consulted certain scholars, I consulted even our umbrella body to try and understand that it's a sensitive matter. We've asked some serious religious questions there in terms of their belief, in terms of how they conduct themselves. And I felt very uncomfortable sharing those data, because I don't want to be, as you know, our community, I spoke about it at the beginning in the slide, the judgmental issue. Sharing a data that shows that majority of our community members are not following certain parts of our faith where things are supposed to be halal or wajib, or majority of people are committing sins, is a very sensitive matter for me. So I had to filter in thinking, okay, what do we want to share? What do we not want to share? And I must admit that I have not shared the data. I felt personally as a leader that there's a lot of learning from that data. However, I didn't have the buy-in from either the trustees or the people who are guiding us spiritually that this is data that should be shared with the wide public, because it will not help the community in the way it's supposed to help. So it was a very difficult situation for me. It's not out of choice that I decided that I don't want to share it with the public. However, I left it to the trustees. If the trustees felt that this was something that needed to be shared, they would have requested me to share, because as you know, as CoEJ, every decision we make, we consult the trustees. And I did not get any pressure from the trustees that, look, we must share it regardless of what data we have. For my own purpose, as the leader of the community, to help the people, there was enough data in there that helped me for the purpose I had asked the data for.
A couple of follow-ups then on this, because this is really interesting. Both WF and Hujjat Stanmore, prior to the pandemic, have conducted their own global and regional and Jamaat level data collection. Project North Star is very well known, and that has a lot of interesting data. Why is it that the community has shared those stats with very sensitive information about what's happening at a global and regional level, but this committee has decided against it? Number one. Number two, if it is very sensitive for the whole community to know of these things, have these been shared with the presidents or with the resident alims in order for them to at least know what the direct challenges are, what the results are of the survey? I mean, is it forever just going to be within the trustees' hands and the board's hands and nobody else? And number three, if you know the results, can you tell us at least an example of something in the manifesto that is directly related to the results, that there is challenge A from the results, and this is how your manifesto is being guided by the challenges that you found in the data analysis?
So unlike the other censuses that you mentioned, which were initiated by the organization, this was not a census that was initiated by the organization. This was something that I had initiated as the leader to help me serve this organization better. So this was data that was not there to be published. I did not, if in the future, this is the question, that are we ever going to publish? I have no intention of publishing that data unless I'm requested by the trustees that we want to publish that data.
Sorry, it's an achievement that you've put on CoEJ's platform.
Yes.
But it's something that you've personally done. And it's something that you want the community to know that you've made an accomplishment by, but it's not something that we have any share of. Do you not see the inherent problem in those two contradicting statements?
Not necessarily, because I have also published the Imam Raza Hardship Fund, which is an achievement by the organization. However, I've chosen to keep the data of those applications as anonymous. Now, people could argue that we want the data of every application, but that is the prerogative that we decided when we launched the fund that we're not going to share with people. So even though it's an accomplishment to get that data to serve the community, I feel I decided at the time as a leader to choose not to share because there's sensitive information. However, if those trustees of CoEJ feel that this is data that they want to be published, I'm all up for it. They could propose it at the next meeting saying, Salim bhai, we want that data to be published to everybody, and I would be more than happy to do it.
For a whole year, you and the trustees have known the problems of the community, but those have not been shared with the resident ulama or the presidents of the communities in order for them to start tackling these issues? So for a whole year we've had a problem, for example, with we have a percentage of people watching pornography, but that's not been passed down as a specific knowledge base of the community's challenge?
It has. So the key challenges have been addressed with the resident alims. They've been addressed, not specifically as a census,
Okay.
but so we have not
I,
sat.
the resident alim have never been addressed by CoEJ.
Yes.
By any member of CoEJ sharing the census data.
Not the census data.
What the challenges are as an analysis of the data. So how can I do my job as a shepherd of the community to look after the community if you sat on that for a whole year and not shared it with us?
So as CoEJ, as you know, you would be well aware that we don't deal directly, I don't personally deal directly with the resident alim. We have a head of ICRA that deals with the resident alims. So we discuss...
Who is the board member on ICRA?
Sheikh Nurul.
No, who is the trustee from the team, the CoEJ team on ICRA, that has not shared that with the resident alim of this Jamaat? Why not?
So we have secretariat
Yeah.
that deals with the board. So there was a designated person who was dealing with the board. Then we had the secretariat that was dealing directly with the board heads. And any information that needs to be related with the head of boards, they deal with the head of boards to then
So
pass it on to the...
Jamaat, are there any other Jamaats that have not received that information from ICRA?
That is an information we can request to ICRA. So we...
But you're pronouncing this as a huge achievement, one of your achievements.
Correct.
Surely you would know whether this achievement has manifested itself in any positive way with the communities.
Absolutely it has, because it doesn't have just one aspect of the census.
Sorry.
The census
My third
has
question-
many...
My third question, Afwan, was what specifically in your manifesto then is related to the challenges in the census, if you could help us to see the movement between what has been accomplished
Yes.
and what is going to be accomplished in your next term, inshallah.
Okay, so in the census, there were many questions in there. So one of them was the financial aspect of the community, which has been addressed by the hardship fund. So we realized there were people struggling financially, and we had to immediately look at that issue and problem, and that was dealt with. We also looked at that there are people who are struggling with Islamic guidance. We also realized that there is disconnection with the office of Marja and the community and the youth. So we brought part of the objective to build that bridge between the two. We also looked at various issues in terms of how to deal with the matrimonial issues, because the divorce is on rise. So that is also an objective that we have, to deal with the matrimonial issues. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any more that you there's one more question from my side, sure, if you don't mind.
So can I just also, just regarding the MAMT, a lot of some of these dates were clashing. So traditionally we had MAMT on the August bank holiday, but this August, for example, was Muharram. So we couldn't actually hold MAMT, and I think that was one of the challenges that was addressed, I think, at the trustees meeting, and hence we were looking at innovative ways to see how we can cater for some of those disparities. Sorry, Sheikh.
Ahsan, thank you. There's a video that's circulating in the community, taking one of your quotes. I don't know when the quote is from exactly, but you're doing a presentation and saying something to the effect of that if the youth are not sort of drawn in by the mainstream speakers and ulama, then you would prefer them at least to go to those alternative Shi'i thinkers as opposed to going outside of the community and away from the faith. In the video that's criticizing you, it then brings up certain speakers that are considered to be controversial. Is that what you meant? That if someone is not going to be listening to a mainstream speaker, you are happy for them to go to listen and learn from Sayyid Hur, Kaumanpuri, Sheikh Arif Abdul Hussein, and people who sometimes in the community is seen as controversial or maybe even outside of the mainstream. So could you give some clarification to those people who are using this as sort of a means of saying that your leadership is problematic because you're ushering in sort of a deviance or allowing in a sort of alternative thinking into the platform of the community?
Thank you. So before I answer that question, I think it is very important that I make it very, very clear that the format in which the video was sent is very un-Islamic, very, very un-Islamic, and I'm sure Sheikh would agree to that, that we should not be as a community taking a route of putting our brothers and sisters down, attacking them. We need to address these issues by directly asking the question. And this is an ongoing trend that people have started by being anonymous just to achieve their goals, to put people down who they disagree with. And I always say, blowing somebody's candle does not make yours brighter. And this is something, a message that I would like all those people to listen to. However, I will answer this question because I've always been very direct throughout my life, and I will continue to do so. That specific video that was again taken out of context, if people watch the whole video, the discussion was over, we are losing our youth and our kids from the centers. People are not coming. And the discussion was over, people are completely leaving. And instead of understanding the problem on why we are losing people from the community, which I believe one of the reasons is all these fitnas that are happening, the bad akhlaq from the community that's happening, which is pushing people away from the community. Instead, what we do is we pass the blame to alternative thinkers. And I explained in my speech there saying that that is not my worry. I would be not worried if these people were going listening to the alternative thinkers. My worry is if they leave the faith. That is a bigger worry. I would not be worried if anybody goes and listens to something which is Islamic, which is still, there's still hope. But imagine if somebody from the community has left and become atheist because of our actions. That is a bigger worry. Now, conveniently, people took part of the clip and started spreading it and actually adding speakers there that I hadn't even mentioned. I had not mentioned those people's names. I had not mentioned those lecturers. So how fair is it for anybody to do that? In fact, to clarify, I sent a message to those people who have been spreading saying, this is exactly what I meant. Guidance for this institution always comes from His Eminence Ayatollah Sistani, may Allah protect him, and we follow the guidance from him. Sheikh Nuru, who's the head of Iqra, very much aligned with the office of His Eminence. We get guidance from the World Federation. We work very closely with them, fully aligned with His Eminence. The last 3 years of our term, not a single person from the alternative thinkers who the community has decided that they don't want to give pulpit has been invited into CoEJ, because that was the guidance from Aga. So therefore, what is the purpose in people still constantly continuing to do this, apart from just me seeing that they want to put me down or they want to have a dig? And I'm not the only one. They do that to many people. And this is why I'm asking that this is time now as a community. If we want to help our future generations, we need to put an end to this. You know, this issue, let's say, might not work in my favor. And people might say, okay, you know what, let's not vote for him. That's fine. I've always said this is not about elections. I'm here today, I won't be there tomorrow. Even if I get a term, I'll do 3 years term. But the future of our kids and our community is very, very important. Whether Salim is here or not, somebody else will come. These fitnas will not stop if we don't put an end to it. So please, let's take this seriously. I'm answering this here today because I've got the opportunity, alhamdulillah. But many people in the community don't get this opportunity to clarify this. And this is not fair on these people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheikh, and thank you, Salim, for such a frank answer to those questions. So I've got a number of questions, but I'll sort of, and they all relate around the same theme, which is the current situation in Gaza. So I'll read the first main question out, and then I'll put in at the stuff in there. So the question is here. By the way, these questions have been sent to us prior to the event. So these are not my questions or Sheikh's questions. We're just putting it to you, yeah, just to clarify that. So this question is, there's a bit of a commentary first and then a question. Perceived silence or inaction, the Gaza conflict has garnered widespread attention, and many organizations have been vocal in their support of Palestinian rights. CoEJ, however, appears less visible in public advocacy. Many of the Khoja Shia Ithna Ashri community and beyond have expressed strong solidarity with the people of Gaza, expecting the same from their leadership. Question: how do you justify CoEJ's stance on Gaza conflict, given that it appears out of step with the strong pro-Palestinian sentiments within the wider Muslim and global community?
So first of all, I'm very passionate about what's happening in that region. I have spoken about it. I issued a video statement, and I issued even a statement publicly. Now, I remember there was a petition of people saying, how come CoEJ is silent? Many trustees know this is a matter that we brought to the trustees, because I might be emotional and sensitive about this issue and I feel a certain way, but for me to issue a statement without consulting the trustees could potentially get me into trouble. Because as you know, and Rasul Bhai also knows, he's a trustee, there are many times when we issue a statement or we send an email or we do certain things within CoEJ, we're always on the firing line. We cannot start just acting with emotions. But the minute I had got the approval of the trustees, because we had to hold a few meetings, we had to get guidance, legally as well, what can we legally do and not do, we there, from that moment onwards, were very active. We did mention the conflict many times. We were always very vocal, and in fact every meeting I attend, be the World Federation meeting, I always mention the issue that's happening there, and we will continue to do so. This is something that is one of the biggest tragedy that's happening around the world at the moment, and within our guidelines that we have, or the legal guidelines that we have, because we have to be responsible. We often have this challenge where people just speak emotionally, but we're not really careful of the impact that we might have. And I think we should have a balance. We should still speak our mind, definitely, but as long as we're not breaking the law, because we have certain centers that are in trouble or we're trying to help and all that. So we need to navigate properly, but we cannot brush this under the carpet, because this is a very, very important matter, and I stand by that.
Just a follow-up question from this. What support was offered when Sheikh and our Jamaat, referring to Leeds Jamaat, on this? What support was offered when Sheikh and our Jamaat were targeted by the newspapers, and Sheikh and the managing committee do feel targeted by the newspapers, and Sheikh and managing committee do feel you were well supported by CoEJ?
So from my understanding, we did support Leeds Jamaat. We held a meeting, we tried to understand the issue. We also gave legal help, funding as well. And I think we were there to understand. We also got some external people involved to try and get guidance on where we stand. And from my understanding, I remember I even got a thank from yourselves in the support we gave you. So
I think there's a statement that was issued.
There was a statement that was issued, and we liaised with Leeds Jamaat to make sure that whatever statement is issued there, we back it, and we issue that statement that we stand by Sheikh, and whatever he had said was taken out of context, and we agree in what he had said, that on the other side there are people who feel they speak and push it quite a lot. In fact, sometimes they get away with quite a lot. So in comparison what Sheikh had said, many people within our community, if not all, agreed to his statement, which we do as well. And thank you very much for at times being vocal, even though you put your own reputation at risk, but you speak on what needs to be said.
I think, looking at the time, I think you've got to go back to Leicester, but is there any other questions before we close up? I think just to add, as far as the issue of Leeds Jamaat, the newspaper and the charity commission in relation to our circumstances, it was very little that CoEJ could sort of do in the sense of actively support, but we had their support. And hopefully, I think in your next term, if you are elected, then we can work on a strategy on how Jamaats can perhaps navigate through these circumstances if they ever get involved in there. So thank you so much, Salim Bhai. Thank you for coming over. And thank you for the questions. I think it shows that you guys have read the manifesto and posed. Sorry, yes.
Thank you very much. That was excellent. Just a comment, actually. I'm so impressed with everything, and Ellie as well. I'm not from a CoEJ community, but I do participate here. For me, it's really a pleasure to listen to you. I just want to say that I'm glad I'm not a judge, because it would have been very difficult to choose between the two of you. Both of you have been very excellent. So that's all I want to say. Very, very good, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think I'd just like to add that the way you've carried this campaign in a positive spirit, focusing on your manifesto and your vision, I think that's commendable to both the candidates. But yeah, well done for that, and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you
for
very
Thursday.
much.
So, there being no more questions, we formally close this session. And once again, thank you all for attending, and thank you to Salim Bhai for being there, and thank you, Sheikh, for hosting this this event. Tariq Bhai, can I request a ziyarat, a close ziyarat? Just before we stand for ziyarat, I've got a message from Brother Abbas Noor. His sister is not well, so can we please recite, Sheikh, if you can lead on that, Amma Yujibu, 5 times? Yeah, or if Tariq Bhai, before you do your ziyarah, if you could just recite 5 times Amma Yujibu, and we'll follow you, inshallah. For Abbas Noor's sister, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. For Abbas Noor's sister and everybody that's not well these days, this shocked by his mother as well. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 أمن يجيب المضطر